He is the most famous serial killer in human history, a dark, calculating genius, a wealthy surgeon, a literal prince stalking the foggy streets of London. But what if I told you that Jack the Ripper, never actually existed? What if the world's most terrifying monster was actually just a marketing campaign? We all know the legend. In 1888, a madman terrorized the Whitechapel district of London. The police were completely baffled. The killer was supposedly a medical genius, a wealthy gentleman who slipped back into high society after committing brutal crimes. He sent taunting letters to the police, laughing at their incompetence and signing them with a name that would echo through history, Jack the Ripper. It is the ultimate true crime story. There's just one massive problem. The man in the top hat, the surgical genius, the taunting letters, they are entirely fake, invented by greedy men in tailored suits who realize that fear is incredibly profitable. To understand the scam, we have to look at the reality. The Whitechapel murders absolutely happened. Between August and November of 1888, five women, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were brutally killed. But London in 1888 was a nightmare. Whitechapel was a desperately poor, overcrowded slum. Violence was an everyday occurrence. The police weren't looking for a criminal mastermind in a silk cape. They were looking for a local vagrant. But a dirty, impoverished criminal doesn't sell newspapers to the wealthy elite of London. The newspapers needed a supervillain. Enter the London press. In the late 1800s, newspapers were in a vicious, cutthroat war for readership. A new style of reporting was taking over called yellow journalism, where facts didn't matter, only sensationalism did. If the truth was boring, they just made things up. And the Whitechapel murders were the perfect opportunity. Before Jack the Ripper, the killer was just known as the Whitechapel murderer. Boring, right? The story was actually starting to lose momentum. Newspapers like the Star realized that if the public lost interest, their sales would plummet. They needed to give the killer a personality. They needed to make him a legend. In September 1888, the Central News Agency in London received a letter written in red ink. It was addressed to the boss and mocked the police. It promised more blood, and for the very first time it was signed with a terrifying new moniker, Jack the Ripper. The agency handed it over to the police and then immediately published it. The public went absolutely insane. Sales skyrocketed. Jack the Ripper was born. But historians and modern forensic linguists have analyzed that letter, and the verdict is shocking. The killer didn't write it. It was a complete forgery. And the prime suspect, a journalist named Frederick Best, who worked for the very agency that discovered the letter. Years later, police officials even admitted they knew the letters were the creation of an enterprising London journalist trying to keep the story alive. Once the media named him, they had to design him. The victims were mutilated, so the press claimed the killer must have extensive medical knowledge, a surgeon or an aristocrat. Why? Because the idea of a wealthy, educated gentleman creeping into the slums to hunt the poor was a terrifying class warfare narrative that upper-class readers couldn't stop buying. The police repeatedly stated the killer showed zero actual surgical skill, but the press ignored the police. They printed the top hat wearing gentleman narrative so aggressively that, to this day, it's all we remember. So if the gentleman mastermind was a media lie, who actually killed those five women? Modern historical consensus points away from royalty and doctors and straight toward the gutter. The most likely suspects were local, severely mentally ill men who lived in the exact neighborhood where the murders happened. Men like Aaron Kosminski, an impoverished local resident, or Charles Cross, a cart driver who was actually found standing over the body of the first victim but was let go because the police didn't know how to secure a crime scene. The killer was never caught, not because he was a genius who outsmarted Scotland Yard, but because forensics didn't exist in 1888 and the media had completely contaminated the investigation by sending thousands of fake letters to the police. The true tragedy of the Whitechapel murders isn't just that 5 women lost their lives to a local madman, it's that their deaths were hijacked and monetized by the media. The journalists of 1888 didn't just invent Jack the Ripper, they invented the blueprint for modern true crime. They realized that if you package real human tragedy with a catchy nickname, a cool outfit, and a sense of mystery, people will buy it forever. We've been buying the Jack the Ripper lie for over 130 years. What other historical monsters are just marketing campaigns? If you want to uncover the dark, untold truth behind history's biggest myths, hit that subscribe button right now. And if you want to know the real story of the 5 women who lost their lives in 1888 without the Hollywood fluff, check out the book I've linked in the pinned comment below. Stay curious and stop believing everything you read. See you in the next one.